my name is Enzo.
And I'm Kelly.
We're super excited today because we're in the Montreal East End at Oasis Infinie. And tonight we have Cristina Roos. So for people that don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about what you do? What kind of skills you have? You teach classes, all of that good stuff.
I'm a yoga teacher, but also a special care counselor by trade. So I've worked with children with learning disabilities as well as youth in northern Quebec. So I have different skills where I like to do art as well, and meditation and as well as teaching yoga, but currently studying yoga therapy. So that's something that in my yoga classes and meditation classes, that is an approach that I bring within the classes. So a lot of breath work, focus on alignment and gentle movements to help balance the nervous system.
Excellent. You mentioned art. Now, do you use art in a holistic way?
It's not something I've integrated so much necessarily in a holistic way. I've done like art workshops with children and sometimes even mandala workshops. But it is something that I'd like to do a little bit more with youth and children, in the sense where, with mandalas and having kids do it for anxiety and things like that. But no, like for example, this summer I was at the Shivananda Yoga Kids Camp, and one of the things we did was we made clay Ganeshas, so the kids did step by step, and they all made their own little statue. So just a great way to have kids express themselves, and it was really cool because it was a very broad kind of model where it was like, okay, here we're going to follow this, and then when they got to paint it, they all painted their own Ganesha. So it was like rainbows of Ganesha that had an army.
Oh, nice.
And you teach here at the studio, right?
Yes, yeah. I teach yoga and meditation at the studio, and also offer private yoga sessions as well. So with children, as well as with families as well, and adults, yeah.
Do you have things that you prefer more than others, or to work with certain people with certain types of issues with different modalities?
Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of in the process right now of integrating a little bit of my different interests. I feel like there's a bit everywhere. So when I started teaching yoga 8 years ago, which was even before I was certified, I was working with kids with autism, high functioning on the spectrum. Mm-hmm. So we're doing social skill classes, and part of the social skill classes was art. We had gestion d'émotion, which was helping them recognize emotions in their body, and yoga and relaxation was also one of the things.
Wow, that's excellent for kids.
Yeah,
and especially autistic kids.
Yeah, and
it's really need that.
Exactly, and it was really nice to see how movement and breath can help regulate the nervous system as well as the sensory system. And that's from there, I think I was sold on yoga, especially working with children, and it was also just a really good tool to do before an activity, to ground them in their bodies. Mm-hmm. So I think moving forward, I'd like to focus specifically on children and children with, I'd say special abilities, not learning disabilities, to help them ground themselves in their bodies and also just regulate the sensory system. Because I think that with children in schools and I'm going on a tangent here, but with children, I think that helping them become aware of themselves and their body and how amazing this vehicle that we inhabit is a very, very empowering tool moving forward.
It's not something that's usually taught to kids, so I'm impressed.
Yeah. So
and I agree that it's really important. It's something that we don't learn. And then as we get older, we still don't learn it, and then we become like these flighty adults that we are. Ungrounded in our bodies, I know.
Me too. Yeah, it's been a lot of relearning, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So can you give us an example of a client that had like a breakthrough either in yoga or with work with children?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think I'll give you an example with yoga because I talked a little bit about the children. And so I give often yoga for beginners. And one of my students, Natasha, who also happens to be one of my friends, she had came for the 6-week session, and over time, when she went back at the end of the 6 weeks to her physio, because she would have like a lot of back pain and things like that, and even she's been seeing an osteopath, and her physio was really impressed by her postural improvements just by doing yoga once a week.
For 6 weeks.
For 6 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's like just 6 sessions. Hour and a half sessions or hour sessions?
Hour sessions.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah, and I tend to, with my yoga classes, especially for gentle beginners, I really tend to focus on the breath and, again, gentle movements so that people have a good foundation moving forward into the practice, because if you have a good foundation in understanding how the breath connects to the movement, I think that then it makes you safer wherever you go, whatever class you have, whatever teacher you have. So I don't know, it was just something that she had came back, and I was really impressed by like the fact that it was something that just within 6 weeks they saw an improvement in her posture.
I wanted to expand on what you were saying about because yoga. Can we talk a little bit about yoga and all the types of yoga that are out there? Can you give us an idea how you see that? Because I know that your yoga is based much more in traditional yoga, and there's a lot of stuff out there that is no longer traditional, has pretty much nothing to do with yoga. Can you draw a picture for people so that they kind of know, is there a way that they can know whether it's based on that or not?
Yeah, and I think yoga, because of marketing and all of these, beautiful pictures of people in warrior positions and meditating on a mountain, we have a very skewed idea of what yoga actually means, and I think it's really, it is confusing to choose a yoga class and to choose even a yoga studio or to figure out what really suits you as a personality. I think that there's a lot of really good yoga out there, as well as some very active yoga, which doesn't necessarily stay true to the intentions of where it comes from. As for picking, I think it's really a question of what you feel comfortable with, but I think it's also keeping in mind how yoga, for example, is more than yoga. The word itself means to invoke union with self. So thinking of that, so if you feel in connection with your yoga practice and your yoga teacher, I think that's important, as well as yoga asanas, which is the more physical practice of yoga, because yoga is so vast. There's the practice of devotion, there's the practice of philosophy, karma yoga, which is selfless service. So there's all of these different realms, which makes yoga, and we in the Western world right now only know one practice of it.
Right, the physical, doing the asanas.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it.
Exactly, which is great, and it's a great beginning, and often brings people to look a little bit deeper and maybe search a little bit deeper and understand maybe the Yoga Sutras or other yoga philosophies that exist, which have been interpreted, because there's so, even within yoga, there's like Kundalini yoga, there's, Ashtanga yoga and Hatha yoga. And Hatha yoga is just the physical practice. And and I think, so to come back to yoga asanas, asana in itself means steady posture. So whatever yoga you're doing, I think it's just important to come back to the breath and to make sure that you're breathing through it, because also that's where the union with self comes in. So I think that it's not necessarily, we're about the yoga per se, but it's how you come on the mat and how you show up.
Can you give us an idea, because there's so many types of yoga out there, there's so much going on in the yoga world, and yet I don't feel that people know what that even means. I know that there's philosophy and stuff behind it, but can you give us like a breakdown of and how to maybe choose a yoga practice or someone to practice with?
Okay, so I think you're completely right about the yoga being something that has there's so much out there right now. There's laughter yoga. I even saw beer yoga or something. And I think, and the marketing behind it, I think, gives us a really misguided and inaccessible perception of yoga, right? We see these warrior positions. I'm meditating for inner peace, and it's all these really inner peace. Come to me right now, please. Why are you not here yet? Right. And I think that oftentimes when I'll tell people I teach yoga, I'm not flexible. So I think it's important to just kind of realize that there's a lot of marketing behind it, and that there is yoga practices that are for everybody and everybody, I should say, even in some way. It's just a question of adapting it, and you can get a stretch without being flexible. And I think it's coming back to the word yoga, which means to yoke union with self. So that practice of, again, intentionally checking in with yourself through practice, through whichever yoga practice you end up choosing, is the most important thing to keep in mind. As well as the word asana, which is the more physical practice of yoga that we know in the West, which the Sanskrit translation means steady posture. So to be able to hold a posture and to keep the breath at the same time, or to be able to breathe fluidly in between, because once we lose our breath, probably our mind and our thoughts are somewhere else, and we're no longer in union or doing yoga, for example. And I think it's also important to realize that yoga is a really ancient practice, and even can, depending on the scholar and who will say, but can date back to anywhere between 2,000 to 5,000 years.
Oh.
And this is they call it a science, but these are technologies of the mind and the body, and there's different ways to yoke that union with self, which is devotional. There's even the more devotional practice, karma yoga, which is considered to be selfless service, so kind of like volunteering and doing things without expecting anything back, as well as the philosophy and then the actual physical practice. So keeping that in mind, and then realizing that what we're seeing is like 1/8 of what yoga is.
Yes, so, I'm thinking of like the iceberg, right?
Yeah.
What we see is the tip, and really yoga is so much greater.
Yeah, and I think that when coming to, start a yoga practice or choose a yoga studio, it's important that first and foremost that you feel comfortable, but also start asking who are the teachers, and who taught those teachers, and where does those teachings come from, because there's so many different kinds of yoga, and which is beautiful, and I think that there's different kinds that can meet different temperaments. However, now again, with the marketing and the business of yoga, anyone can give a training. And Rod Stryker, who's a well-known yoga teacher in the US, and he's been teaching for a long time, he said, tell me who your teacher's teacher is, and I will tell you the quality of your teachings. And I think that that's, it's not to say that, you need a whole lineage behind it, but I think it's important to recognize where the teachings are rooted in. So if you can ask more questions as to where it comes from, you can get a better idea of what kind of yoga you'll be getting. Right,
because there's yoga that's more like just the physical aspect. It's more like exercise. People are marketing yoga as exercise, but it's not just that, and it's sad to leave it as just that physical aspect, because it has so much more to offer.
Yeah, and I think that it's great to start off like that, and for me too, like the first yoga class that I took was in college, and it was like, here, and it was something that actually felt really good, and and then I started coming back for more, buying books, and trying to understand, okay, what is it? But so, I don't want to take away from the physical practice. Right. However, I want people to also understand that it's far greater than that.
I think it's also a tough sell, bringing the culture of yoga from the East to the West, and how to approach it so that it reaches the biggest audience. So that I think part of the problem is like, how do you reach everybody without turning people off? So it's a struggle, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Cristina, I'm curious about your story. How did you get to where you are? You weren't always a yoga teacher. What did you do before? What brought you to this? What transition made you become the person you are today?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, I studied special care counseling in Bani, and I've worked with different populations, but I think what really brought me to that was my first work placement, or my first work experience was at the Miriam home, and I worked with adults with a mild intellectual impairment. And just in brief, at the same time, I was in university, other family life challenges came up, and stress happened, and I had adrenal fatigue. So it became something where and yoga was something that I was starting to practice, but it was like very, very like, it was also more like exercise at the beginning. And then with time, it's just something that I became very interested in, and it was also my way of coping, like understanding the philosophy and going to class and just digging a bit deeper was my way of understanding what I was going through emotionally. So it was almost like a lens, information, and like it was the Yoga Sutras that I was reading. So it was just helping me get through whatever challenges that I was going through at that moment. And I think that with time I was like, oh well, I'm helping people, and it would be really nice to be able to use this philosophy and use this lens to help other people understand it and integrating it. And again, going back with the movement and working with kids with autism, I think that when we move our body, we start to bust through blocks, and that flexibility that comes within our body can be taken off to the mat into our everyday experiences. And that was something that I just wanted to help people do through movement.
Do you have any idea or your personal opinion on why human beings are on Earth? What's our mission? Why are we here? What are we doing?
So that's a big question. I think first and foremost, as human beings, I think, let's go to the fact that it's like the Earth is this amazing ecosystem, or even just organism within itself, that has all of these different interconnecting parts, which when you actually sit down and observe it or actually contemplate on it, it's quite fascinating, and even sometimes could lead to existential crises. Where you're like, what is this? And I can say I've had a few myself.
Not me.
No,
I'm above existential crises.
And especially with everything with all of the conflict and the fear that we see in the world and in the news right now, it's easy to kind of like say, oh, we're just a virus or something.
Yes.
We're just hurting.
We do look like that.
Yeah. But I think first and foremost, we're here to connect with ourselves so that we can connect truly and genuinely with others. And when I say connect with ourselves, is really to be honest with ourselves and find that space of self-love, but also peace. But peace in the sense where not like, oh, I feel peace, but being okay with all of what's going on within you, the good, the bad, the parts that you don't like. And then from there, once you can really truly find that peace that exists within you, then you can then be at peace with the world and integrate it in a different way, and also bring that peace with the world. And I think that with all that's going on, or with all that we see, we want to do, but I think that we don't realize how powerful our presence can be. And if there's one thing that I've learned in my experience working with different people and things like that, that sometimes my presence is more powerful than any word I can say, any action I can do. So I think it's to be able to recognize the power that lies just within our being, and like actually being versus doing.
Yeah, have you experienced your own personal growth, obviously, and the greater awareness that you talk about? I'm sure you have, through your clients, or as your clients come in, do they stimulate your own growth?
Yeah, all the time. All the time. I think that there's different levels, but I think most people that come in are I feel like a mirror of what I'm going through in that moment, or I don't know if it's a mirror specifically, or if it's like more cosmic astrological energies at play sometimes that have similar themes,
and that's when we're the best teacher is someone that understands, obviously.
Definitely. But I try to treat every single person that I come in with as a teacher. I see relationships as assignments. So therefore, I guess they do in turn help my growth. But I think in being able to see them as teachers, I'm able to truly, genuinely listen and hear and respond. So I think that for sure, it's it's like I teach as I like. There's a quote that says something like, I can't remember word for word, but it's like, I'm the teacher and my students learning, but I'm also a student in my teaching.
Yeah, so, I teach what I need to learn most or something? I find that to be the case.
Yeah, also, yeah. And even just that exchange, right? It's like I'm giving you information, but how you respond to that information is also gonna help me understand the information that I'm transmitting, or go deeper. Especially as a yoga teacher, sometimes you try to explain a yoga posture, and sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's depending on the student, depending on their level of awareness, and other times they'll ask you questions, And I might not have the answer right away, so I'll say, oh, I'll get back to you. And then I'll do my yoga practice, and then I'll go in the posture. I'll be like, oh, that's what they're talking about. And I can come back the next class or the next time that I see them and be able to teach it from a different perspective. So
yeah, you've learned something because of their question.
Yeah, exactly. And questions are the best way to go about things.
For sure.
Is there someone or something that inspires you?
There's a lot of teachers that are, I say teachers that inspire me, yeah. And I think we're talking about the more traditional. I was talking a little bit about the more traditional aspect of yoga. So first and foremost, and I think maybe this is right now, but Swami Shivananda is someone that has really deeply inspired me. He's written over 300 books in his lifetime. He was one of the first people to ever really, or not ever, but to translate a lot of the Vedas and the Tantra scriptures. So for me, and the fact that he wrote 300 books in his life, I question, where did you have time to do that? I'm actually like, Swami Shivananda, where did you have time to do that? But thank you.
Yeah.
On the other plane, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Somehow, exactly. And also just his tenacity to encourage people to live his own yoga, but encourage other people to live their own yoga with courage and this sense of unapologeticness about your own truth. And how many disciples he had, and I say students who brought yoga to the West all around the world, Australia, and then Canada, which Swami Vishnudevananda is one of the teachers where I've gotten a lot of my teachings from. And then on a more, I say not new age, but on a more Western level, there's Gabrielle Bernstein, Dr. Wayne Dyer, Marianne Williamson, who have really deeply inspired me in their teachings and in their way of accessing these teachings and making it accessible for so many that I find very inspiring. So it's like trying to find that balance of staying connected to the roots, but at the same time responding to what is needed right now and how the message can be conveyed in the most I don't say appropriate, but in the most in the way that can resonate with the most people.
Mm-hmm.
So Cristina, would you like to add anything either about yourself or about other work that you do? Is there anything that you'd like us to know before we close?
So I think I spoke a lot about yoga and my meditation practice, but I also offer meditation classes as well here at Oasis on Tuesday evenings. As well as there will be a free, I'm working on a free beta meditation class or like a prototype that I'll be offering that'll be based in mantras and meditation. So a different approach, it's similar to mindfulness, but a little bit different in regards to focusing the concentration and things like that. So that's something that will be coming up in the next few months, as well as I mentioned that I draw. So I have a collection of art stuff that can be found here at Oasis as well at the boutique. That's mandala and different kinds of spiritual symbols like the Om or even the peace sign or whatever it is that inspires me in that time, even mantras that I'll write. So I like to write in Sanskrit and it's a great meditation for me. So.
And if people wanted to contact you, where can they contact you?
They can contact me at Oasis, so you can go on the website, oasisinfinie.com.
Okay.
And there's a contact area, and then if you're interested in yoga, you can just type it in, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
And actually, before we close, can you tell us a little bit about, you mentioned the shop here. Can you tell us what else people can find?
So you can find some Reiki, massage, even NLP. There's different classes that are given by different professionals, and even if you're a professional and looking for a space in the East End, or whether it's for massage or workshops, it's a great place.
And in the shop, what kind of things are sold?
That's also an important part. Yeah, well, it's a holistic center, right? So you have the service here, and then in the front you have crystals, some giftware, some essential oils, or a few essential oils, but products also made with essential oils by Aromadel, who's an aromatherapist.
Cards.
There's also some cards, a few books here and there. We also have a green corner where we recycle books, and some of the proceeds we're collecting will be donated to a foundation. So yeah, there's a little bit of everything, and always a smile. My mom will always greet you with a smile. So please come and see us.
Thank you so much, Cristina. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having us here as well. And maybe we'll be back some other time.
Thank you for having me. It was a real pleasure speaking with you.